May 27, 1944. Dover, England. 05:47 hours. Lieutenant David Strangeways stands on the cliffs overlooking the English Channel, watching through binoculars as German reconnaissance aircraft makes its third pass over the coastline in 5 days. The Messerschmitt Me-262 stays well outside anti-aircraft range, its cameras recording what Strangeways desperately needs it to see. Below him, spread across fields that yesterday were empty, sits an entire American armored division. Hundreds of Sherman tanks, artillery batteries, supply trucks lined up in neat rows, fuel depots marked with proper signage, even radio antennae extending from command tents, crackling with military traffic. Strangeways lowers his binoculars and smiles. The German pilot is photographing the greatest military deception in human history. Every tank down there is inflatable rubber. Every truck is plywood and canvas stretched over wooden frames. The radio traffic is pre-recorded loops played through loudspeakers. And that American armored division, designated the 1st United States Army Group, doesn't exist. Neither does its commanding officer, a certain aggressive general named George S. Patton, at least not where German intelligence believes he is. This moment represents the culmination of Operation Fortitude, the most sophisticated deception campaign ever conceived. Its success or failure will be measured in thousands of lives, saved or lost during the invasion of France, now just days away. What the German pilot doesn't know, what German high command cannot suspect, is that British intelligence is reading their encrypted communications in near real time. That every German assessment, every intelligence report about Allied invasion preparations is being monitored, analysed and exploited by the very forces being assessed. The Germans aren't just being deceived, they're being choreographed, their beliefs and responses carefully orchestrated like actors in a play where only one side knows the script. Strangeways watches the reconnaissance plane turn eastward toward France, carrying photographs that will reinforce everything German intelligence already believes about Allied invasion plans. Those beliefs are completely, systematically wrong. The real invasion force is assembling 200 miles southwest in Portsmouth and Southampton, preparing to strike Normandy beaches that Germans consider a secondary target. The massive force supposedly gathering opposite Pas de Calais, the obvious invasion site where France and England are just 21 miles apart, is a phantom army of rubber and lies. This is the secret war. Not the war of tanks and bombers and naval bombardments, but the war of perception, of information control, of systematic psychological manipulation on a scale never before attempted. A war where the weapons are codes, lies, double agents, and carefully managed leaks, where success is measured not in territory captured, but in enemy divisions held in the wrong place, waiting for an invasion that will never come, where the battlefield is the enemy commander's mind, and victory comes when he makes decisions based on the reality you've constructed for him, rather than the reality that exists. The story of how Allied intelligence services convinced the German military to fight the wrong war, in the wrong place, at the wrong time, begins years before D-Day, in the cramped offices of British intelligence services desperately seeking any advantage against a seemingly unstoppable enemy. September 1940. London. The German Luftwaffe has been bombing British cities for 3 weeks. France has fallen. The British Expeditionary Force barely escaped annihilation at Dunkirk. Nazi Germany controls continental Europe from Norway to the Spanish border. Britain stands alone. An invasion seems imminent. In this desperate context, a small team of intelligence officers in MI5, Britain's domestic counterintelligence service, begins implementing a plan so audacious that its success will later seem impossible. The foundation of this plan is the double-cross system, operation codenamed XX by British intelligence. The concept is elegantly simple in theory, breathtakingly complex in execution. Every German agent sent to Britain will be captured, turned and used to feed false information back to German intelligence. Not some agents, Not most agents, every single one. The Germans will believe they have a network of spies reporting from Britain. In reality, every single report, every observation, every piece of intelligence flowing from Britain to Germany will be controlled, scripted, and choreographed by British intelligence. The man responsible for conceiving this system is Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Argyle Robertson, universally known as Tar Robertson for his initials. Robertson is 30 years old, a career officer with the Seaforth Highlanders before transferring to military intelligence. He understands something fundamental about human psychology that makes the double-cross system possible. People believe what they expect to believe. If German intelligence expects their agents to report valuable information, they'll interpret ambiguous or manufactured intelligence as valuable. If German commanders expect an invasion at Pas de Calais because it's the logical choice, they'll accept evidence supporting that expectation while dismissing contradictory information. Robertson's system depends on a remarkable capability that German intelligence doesn't suspect Britain possesses. Every German intelligence message is encrypted using the Enigma cipher machine, the same technology protecting German military communications. German cryptographers believe Enigma is mathematically unbreakable, offering over 150 quintillion possible configurations. They're wrong. At Bletchley Park, a country estate 50 miles northwest of London, teams of mathematicians, linguists, and engineers are systematically breaking Enigma codes, reading German intelligence traffic in near real time. This capability, codenamed Ultra, provides Robertson with an extraordinary advantage. When German agents are sent to Britain, British intelligence knows they're coming. Ultra intercepts reveal their names, their cover stories, their training, their mission objectives, sometimes even their landing sites. What should be a one-sided intelligence war, German agents gathering information about British defences, becomes a completely controlled environment where Britain reads German expectations and then carefully fulfills them with precisely manufactured lies. The first test case arrives on September 3rd, 1940. Two agents, codenamed Summer and Tate by the Germans, parachute into England near Northampton. They carry wireless radios, coding systems, and instructions to report on airfield locations, military installations, and bomb damage assessment. British security services arrest them within hours of landing. Summer, whose real name is Gösta Karoli, is a Swedish citizen recruited by the Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service. Tate is Wolf Schmidt, a Danish national. Both men face a choice: execution as spies under wartime law or cooperation. Karoli agrees to cooperate, then attempts suicide by throwing himself down a stairwell at his detention facility. The attempt fails, leaving him injured but alive. His usefulness is compromised. Schmidt, however, proves more adaptable. He's 30 years old, educated, and unlike Karoli, seems genuinely disillusioned with Nazi Germany. After 3 days of interrogation at Camp 020, MI5's Specialised Interrogation Centre in southwest London, Schmidt agrees to work for British intelligence. His reasoning is pragmatic. He faces certain execution as a spy. Cooperation offers survival and possibly a chance to undermine the regime that sent him on this mission. Schmidt becomes Agent Tate in British service, named after the comedian Harry Tate. His German handlers believe he's operating freely in Britain, reporting valuable intelligence via wireless transmissions. In reality, every transmission is composed by British intelligence officers, carefully crafted to build his credibility with German handlers while feeding them information that serves Allied purposes. The messages start simple. Bomb damage reports slightly exaggerated to make Luftwaffe raids seem more effective than they are. Observations of military installations that actually exist, building trust through verifiable accuracy. Complaints about food rationing and civilian morale problems that confirm German expectations about British suffering under bombardment. The subtlety of the deception is remarkable. Agent Tate doesn't report obviously false information. He reports a careful mixture of truth, partial truth, and precisely calibrated lies. When German intelligence verifies his reports against other sources, reconnaissance photography, signals intelligence, reports from other agents, who are also controlled by British intelligence, they find confirmation. The system is self-reinforcing. Each successful deception creates confidence in the source, making German intelligence more likely to believe subsequent reports. By December 1940, MI5 controls 20 German agents operating in Britain. Some are refugees who were coerced by German intelligence. Others are mercenaries motivated by money. A few are ideological opponents of Nazism who volunteered to spy for Germany specifically to betray the mission. All of them face the same choice: cooperation or execution. Most choose cooperation. Those who refuse are executed under the Treachery Act of 1940, their deaths kept secret to prevent German intelligence from realizing their networks are compromised. The Double Cross Committee, officially designated the 20 Committee for the Roman numeral 20, meets weekly at MI5 headquarters at 58 St. James Street in London. The committee brings together representatives from MI5, MI6, military intelligence, and operational commands. They review every piece of information to be transmitted by controlled agents, ensuring consistency across the network and coordination with actual military operations. The chairman is John Cecil Masterman, a 49-year-old Oxford historian and athlete who brings academic rigor to the art of systematic deception. Masterman understands that successful deception requires layered complexity. A simple lie is easily detected, but a complex web of partial truths, where multiple sources confirm each other and where the deception is embedded in verifiable facts, becomes extremely difficult to unravel. The committee develops sophisticated principles for crafting effective deception. Every controlled agent must have a consistent personality and reporting pattern. If an agent suddenly changes his reporting style or provides information far beyond his supposed access, German handlers will become suspicious. Each agent is given a backstory, a plausible reason for being in Britain, and limitations on what information he could realistically obtain. Agent Garbo, perhaps the most successful double agent in history, demonstrates these principles perfectly. Garbo's real name is Juan Pujol Garcia, a 32-year-old Spanish citizen who volunteers his services to British intelligence in early 1941. Garcia hates fascism after experiencing the Spanish Civil War. He initially approaches British intelligence in Lisbon, offering to spy for them. The British, overwhelmed with volunteers of dubious reliability, reject him. Undeterred, Garcia approaches the Germans, convinces them he's a genuine pro-Nazi agent, and gets recruited by the Abwehr to spy in Britain. There's one problem with Garcia's mission. He never goes to Britain. He stays in Lisbon, fabricating reports about British military preparations using tourist guidebooks, train timetables, and pure imagination. His reports are riddled with errors that should expose him immediately. He reports British troops embarking from a port that doesn't exist. He describes military units with implausible equipment. Yet German intelligence accepts his reports as genuine, paying him regularly and even awarding him decorations. Garcia's success at deceiving German intelligence from Portugal finally convinces MI5 that he might be useful. In April 1942, British intelligence brings him to London, gives him the codename Garbo, after the actress Greta Garbo, because he's the greatest actor in the world, and begins feeding him carefully scripted intelligence to transmit to his German handlers. Garbo's network expands rapidly. He invents sub-agents, fictional informants, who supposedly gather intelligence across Britain. There's the Venezuelan student in Glasgow, the Welsh nationalist in Swansea, the Portuguese businessman in London. None of these people exist, but German intelligence believes they do because Garbo's reports are so detailed, so consistent, and so well corroborated by other controlled sources. The genius of the Garbo network is its scale and coherence. By 1944, Garbo supposedly controls 27 agents and informants across Britain. British intelligence creates elaborate fictional identities for each one, complete with personalities, motivations, and limitations. The Venezuelan student can report on shipping in Glasgow harbour, but wouldn't have access to military planning. The Portuguese businessman in London moves in social circles, where he might overhear useful gossip, but wouldn't see classified documents. Each fictional agent's reports stay within plausible boundaries, creating a network that seems entirely realistic to German handlers. The test of the double-cross system comes in August 1942 during the Dieppe raid, a disastrous amphibious assault on the French coast that costs Canadian and British forces over 3,000 casualties. German intelligence had excellent advance warning of the raid, but this warning didn't come from their agents in Britain. It came from signals intelligence and coastal reconnaissance. British-controlled agents deliberately failed to report the Dieppe preparations accurately, a test to see if German intelligence would notice the failure. They didn't. German confidence in their British networks remained unshaken, despite the agents' complete failure to provide tactical warning of a major operation launched from British soil. This failure to notice proves what British intelligence suspected. German handlers are so confident in their agents that they interpret absence of intelligence as the agents not having access to that particular information, rather than the agents being compromised. The psychology is understandable. If you believe your agents are genuine, you rationalize their failures. The agent wasn't in the right place. The operation was too secret. Luck wasn't with us this time. These rationalizations protect the deception from exposure. By January 1943, British intelligence has achieved total control over German intelligence collection in Britain. Every agent is doubled. Every report is manufactured. German intelligence has no genuine sources of information about British military preparations. They're operating completely blind while believing they have excellent visibility. This capability transforms strategic planning. British and American military planners can implement operations knowing German intelligence will see exactly what the Allies want them to see. Nothing more, nothing less. The scale of military build-up in Britain during 1943 and early 1944 is staggering. Over 1.5 million American troops arrive in Britain between January 1943 and June 1944. These forces require 16 million tons of supplies and equipment, thousands of landing craft, specialized assault vehicles, naval vessels, and aircraft arrive at British ports and airfields. This build-up cannot be hidden. German reconnaissance aircraft flying along the coast can photograph the expansion. German signals intelligence can track the arrival of new units through radio traffic. German intelligence agents in neutral countries can observe shipping patterns and troop movements. What can be controlled is German interpretation of this build-up. The Allies need German high command to believe the invasion will come at Pas de Calais. This isn't arbitrary. Pas de Calais is the logical invasion site. It's the shortest crossing from England to France, just 21 miles across the Strait of Dover. It offers the most direct route to Germany. Its ports are closer to British bases. Every rational military analysis points to Pas de Calais as the invasion site. But the Allies have chosen Normandy, 150 miles southwest along the French coast. Normandy offers longer beaches, suitable for simultaneous multi-division landings. Its defences are less developed than Pas de Calais. And perhaps most importantly, it's unexpected. The Germans will defend it, but they'll defend Pas de Calais more heavily, because that's where logic says the invasion must come. Operation Fortitude, the comprehensive deception plan, builds on this logical assumption. It seeks to convince German intelligence that the Allies are doing exactly what logic suggests they should do, invading at Pas de Calais with the maximum possible force. Fortitude has two components. Fortitude North creates a fictional invasion threat against Norway, tying down German forces in Scandinavia. Fortitude South creates a fictional army group in southeast England, supposedly preparing to invade Pas de Calais. The star of Fortitude South is General George S. Patton, America's most aggressive and famous field commander. In reality, Patton is in disgrace after slapping 2 shell-shocked soldiers in Sicily, a scandal that nearly ended his career. General Dwight Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, needs Patton's skills, but can't give him a high-profile command immediately. The solution is elegant. Make Patton the commander of a fictional army group. The First United States Army Group, FUSAG, supposedly consists of 11 divisions, over 150,000 men, based in southeast England, opposite Pas de Calais. FUSAG doesn't exist, but German intelligence believes it does because the deception is so carefully layered. Controlled agents, particularly Garbo, report extensively on FUSAG preparations. Garbo's sub-agents supposedly observe troops arriving, equipment being stockpiled, and headquarters being established. The reports are detailed enough to be convincing, but not so detailed that they seem implausible. Radio traffic creates electronic signatures for fictional units. Real signals units broadcast carefully scripted messages using FUSAG call signs, creating the radio fingerprint of a massive army group. The visual deception is even more elaborate. Entire dummy installations are constructed in southeast England. Inflatable rubber tanks manufactured by British film studios are deployed in fields visible to German reconnaissance aircraft. These tanks are remarkably realistic from the air. They have correct dimensions, realistic shadows, and are positioned in proper military formations. Dummy landing craft fill estuaries. These craft, built from scaffolding and canvas, create the appearance of invasion fleet assembly. Dummy aircraft are parked on airfields. Dummy supply depots with neatly stacked fake crates convince overhead reconnaissance that massive logistical preparations are underway. The dummy installations include elaborate details. Laundry lines are strung between tents, suggesting human occupation. Vehicle tracks are created in mud around installations. Smoke rises from field kitchens that are actually just smoke generators. The deception even includes sound effects. In some locations, audio recordings of military activity, vehicle engines, shouted orders, equipment noise are played through loudspeakers to convince any nearby civilians or potential agents that real military activity is occurring. German reconnaissance flights photograph these installations repeatedly. The Luftwaffe's reconnaissance squadrons, what remains of them after years of attrition, fly regular missions over southern England. They take thousands of photographs that are analysed by German photo interpreters, who dutifully report massive Allied build-up in southeast England. These interpreters are highly skilled professionals using excellent stereoscopic analysis equipment. They note every tank, every landing craft, every supply depot. They produce detailed order of battle assessments that show exactly what the Allies want them to see. The sophistication of the deception extends to counter-reconnaissance. The Allies deliberately allow some German reconnaissance flights to succeed, while making others costly enough to seem realistic. RAF fighters intercept some flights, shoot down some aircraft, and force others to abort. The success rate is carefully managed. Too many successful reconnaissance missions would seem suspicious. Too few would make Germans doubt their photo intelligence. The balance creates an information environment where German intelligence gets high-quality photographs of the deception while believing they're obtaining this intelligence through their own skill. Neutral diplomats and journalists provide another information channel that the Allies exploit carefully. Diplomats from Spain, Portugal, Sweden, and other neutral nations are stationed in London. German intelligence cultivates these diplomats as sources, believing they provide independent verification of information from agents. British counterintelligence identifies which diplomats are in contact with German intelligence and feeds them carefully selected information. A Spanish diplomat is allowed to observe military installations on a drive through Kent. He reports what he sees to his German contacts, not realizing he was shown exactly what British intelligence wanted him to see. The Japanese ambassador to Germany, Baron Hiroshi Oshima, provides an unexpected deception channel. Oshima is extraordinarily well connected in Berlin, meeting regularly with Hitler and top German military officials. He reports these conversations to Tokyo in encrypted messages using the purple cipher. What Oshima doesn't know is that American cryptanalysts broke purple in 1940. The Allies read his reports about German assessments of Allied invasion plans. When Oshima reports that German High Command expects the invasion at Pas de Calais, the Allies know their deception is working. When he reports German concerns about Normandy, the Allies intensify Fortitude deceptions to alleviate those concerns. The role of ultra-intelligence in supporting Fortitude cannot be overstated. Every German intelligence report, every assessment by German military intelligence, every discussion of Allied invasion plans in encrypted German messages is read by British codebreakers at Bletchley Park within hours of transmission. This provides something unprecedented in military history: real-time feedback on deception effectiveness. When Fortitude deceptions succeed, Ultra shows German commanders accepting the false information and making decisions based on it. When deceptions fail or create suspicion, Ultra reveals the doubts, allowing Allied deception planners to adjust their approach immediately. This creates a closed-loop system where deception operations can be refined continuously. German intelligence reports doubts about an agent's reliability, so that agent's traffic is adjusted. German commanders express concern about insufficient reconnaissance over a particular area, so the Allies ensure their next reconnaissance flight over that area yields excellent photography of dummy installations. German High Command questions whether the Allies have sufficient landing craft for a Pas de Calais invasion, so Garbo and other agents report the arrival of additional landing craft at southeast England harbours. The deception must coordinate with actual military operations carefully. Real units and real equipment are preparing for the actual invasion at Portsmouth, Southampton, and other South Coast ports. These preparations cannot be hidden completely, but they can be contextualized. Fortitude's backstory presents the Normandy preparations as a preliminary operation designed to draw German forces away from Pas de Calais before the main invasion. Garbo's reports describe the Normandy force as a secondary effort, perhaps 5 to 8 divisions, intended to capture ports and establish a foothold that will draw German reserves away from the real invasion area. The actual invasion force assembles in extraordinary concentration. Over 156,000 troops will land on D-Day across 5 beaches. Nearly 7,000 vessels will participate, from massive battleships to small landing craft. The naval concentration represents the largest amphibious operation in history, yet German intelligence estimates are systematically wrong. They believe the Normandy force is smaller than it actually is, while simultaneously believing an even larger force is preparing to strike Pas de Calais afterward. The timing of D-Day itself plays into German expectations. The invasion requires specific tidal and moon conditions: low tide to expose beach obstacles, strong moonlight for airborne operations, and calm seas for the crossing. These conditions occur only a few days each month. German meteorologists studying the same data predict rough weather in early June that would make invasion impossible. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, commanding Army Group B, responsible for defending northern France, even returns to Germany to celebrate his wife's birthday, confident the weather will prevent any invasion attempt. British meteorologists studying the same weather patterns identify a brief window of marginally acceptable conditions on June 6th. The weather will be rough, worse than ideal, but just barely within operational limits. German meteorologists miss this window entirely, predicting continued storms that would preclude invasion. This meteorological intelligence failure, independent of Fortitude, contributes to German surprise. At 0300 hours on June 6, 1944, Allied airborne forces begin landing behind Normandy beaches. By 0630 hours, the first assault waves are hitting the beaches. German commanders receiving reports of the landings face a critical decision. Is this the main invasion, or is it the diversion Fortitude predicted? German intelligence assessments, based on reports from controlled agents, insist Pas de Calais remains the primary target. The Normandy landings, they argue, are meant to draw German armour away from the real invasion area. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, overall commander of German forces in the West, requests permission to move armoured reserves toward Normandy. Hitler, who has been awake until 0300 hours and is now sleeping, cannot be disturbed. When he finally wakes at 1000 hours and receives briefings, the intelligence assessment emphasizes that Fortitude intelligence indicates Pas de Calais is still the main target. Hitler orders the armoured reserves to remain in position, waiting for the real invasion that will never come. This decision has enormous consequences. The German 15th Army, defending Pas de Calais, consists of 19 divisions, including several panzer divisions. These forces remain in position throughout June 6th, waiting to repel an invasion that exists only in reports from controlled agents. Meanwhile, the German 7th Army defending Normandy has just 8 divisions to contest the Allied landings. The force ratio is 156,000 Allied troops against approximately 50,000 Germans in the immediate landing area. Without the missing panzer divisions, German defenders cannot generate sufficient counterattack power to throw the Allies back into the sea. The most remarkable aspect of Fortitude South is that it continues working after D-Day. For 7 weeks after the Normandy landings, German High Command continues to believe the main invasion is still coming at Pas de Calais. Agent Garbo's final masterstroke comes on June 9th, 3 days after D-Day. In a lengthy transmission to his German handlers, Garbo explains that he had tried to warn them about Normandy. His sub-agent network had gathered intelligence indicating the Normandy-Operation was imminent, but he hadn't been able to get through on the radio before the landings began. This explanation is carefully crafted to absolve Garbo of blame for failing to provide warning while simultaneously reinforcing his credibility. More importantly, Garbo's message reaffirms that Normandy is a diversion. The real invasion, he insists, is still coming at Pas de Calais. The American First Army Group, Patton's fictional command, remains in southeast England preparing for the main operation. German intelligence accepts this assessment completely. On June 10th, German military intelligence in Berlin sends a message to their field commanders. Garbo's report is credible. The invasion at Pas de Calais is still expected. The German 15th Army remains at Pas de Calais, guarding against a threat that doesn't exist, throughout June and into July. By the time German High Command realizes Normandy is the only invasion, Allied forces have established an unbreakable lodgment. Over 850,000 troops and 150,000 vehicles are ashore. The Germans have lost the battle of the build-up. They cannot match Allied reinforcement rates, and the opportunity to destroy the invasion at the beaches has passed irretrievably. The statistical impact of Fortitude on D-Day casualties and success rates is difficult to quantify precisely, but clearly significant. American forces landing at Omaha Beach face the strongest German resistance and suffer nearly 2,500 casualties. Had the German 15th Army's panzer divisions been available to counterattack at Omaha on June 6th or June 7th, the landing might have failed. British and Canadian forces at Gold, Juno and Sword Beaches face lighter resistance, partly because German reserves that could have reinforced those sectors are held at Pas de Calais. The operational level effect is that Allied forces establish a lodgment without facing the full strength of German forces in France, buying time to build combat power before major German counterattacks develop. Post-war analysis by German officers reveals the psychological impact of intelligence failure. General Hans Speidel, Rommel's chief of staff, would later write that German commanders fought the invasion without accurate intelligence about Allied intentions, capabilities, or timing. Every decision was made in an information void. where German intelligence provided reports that seemed credible but were systematically wrong. Commanders who questioned intelligence assessments found themselves arguing against extensive documentation from multiple sources, not realizing that all those sources were controlled by the enemy. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, Hitler's chief of staff, wrote in his memoirs about the Fortitude deception after learning of it post-war. "We were not merely defeated in battle. We were defeated in the war of intelligence before the first shot was fired. Our decisions were based on information carefully crafted to lead us into error. We deployed our forces to counter threats that didn't exist while underestimating the threat that did. The double-cross system's success depended on German institutional blindness to the possibility of comprehensive compromise." German intelligence conducted multiple investigations of their British networks between 1942 and 1944. Each investigation found explanations for anomalies that didn't involve agent compromise. When agents failed to provide warning of operations, investigators blamed security rather than control. When agents' reports seemed too good to be true, investigators attributed it to the agent's skill rather than enemy manipulation. This institutional blindness had psychological roots. Admitting the British networks were comprehensively compromised meant admitting that German intelligence had no reliable information about British preparations. This admission would require acknowledging that major strategic decisions were made without valid intelligence. The psychological cost of this admission was too high. It was easier to believe the networks were genuine and occasionally unsuccessful than to accept they were completely controlled. The final accounting of Operation Fortitude's impact reveals its unprecedented scale and effectiveness. Over 100,000 false reports were transmitted to German intelligence through controlled agents between 1942 and 1945. These reports contained millions of words of carefully crafted deception, coordinated across dozens of fictional agents. The creation of FUSAG as a fictional army group required over 250 separate intelligence reports to establish and maintain. The physical deception elements, dummy tanks, landing craft and installations, numbered in the thousands of pieces. German intelligence never suspected the true nature of their British networks. Not one controlled agent was identified as such by German counterintelligence during the war. Several controlled agents received decorations from German intelligence for the quality of their reporting. Garbo received the Iron Cross Second Class in June 1944 for his services to the Reich, presented in absentia since he couldn't exactly travel to Germany to collect it. Several months later, Britain awarded him the Member of the Order of the British Empire for his services to the Allied cause. He remains possibly the only person to receive military decorations from both sides in the same war. The human cost that Fortitude helped avoid cannot be calculated precisely, but informed estimates provide context. Military analysts studying post-war documents estimate that if German armoured reserves had been available to counterattack the Normandy beaches on D-Day June 6th and 7th, Allied casualties could have been 50 to 100% higher. The actual D-Day casualties were approximately 10,000 Allied troops killed, wounded, or missing. Without Fortitude's success in holding German reserves at Pas de Calais, casualties could have reached 15,000 to 20,000. Each of those 5,000 to 10,000 lives saved represents a person who came home, started a family, lived a full life, because a deception operation convinced German commanders to deploy their forces in the wrong place. Beyond immediate casualties, Fortitude's success accelerated the Allied timetable for establishing a lodgement and beginning breakout operations. The July breakout from Normandy, Operation Cobra, succeeded partly because German forces were still disorganized, understrength, and lacking the armoured reserves held too long at Pas de Calais. This faster operational tempo shortened the war in Europe by weeks, possibly months, preventing countless additional casualties and destruction. The intelligence war extended beyond Fortitude into every theatre of World War II. In the Pacific, American codebreakers had broken Japanese naval codes as early as 1942 providing Admiral Chester Nimitz with complete knowledge of Japanese fleet movements and operational plans. The Battle of Midway in June 1942 was won partly because Nimitz knew Japanese plans in advance, allowing him to position his outnumbered carrier force for a devastating ambush. At Station Hypo in Pearl Harbor, Commander Joseph Rochefort and his team of cryptanalysts worked impossible hours to break the JN-25 code used by the Japanese Navy. The work combined mathematical analysis, linguistic expertise, and brilliant intuition. When Japanese messages referred to an upcoming operation against target AF, Rochefort's team deduced that AF meant Midway. They convinced Midway to transmit a plain language radio message claiming their water purification system was broken. When Japanese radio intercepts reported AF was having water problems, the identification was confirmed. This intelligence allowed Nimitz to position his 3 carriers northeast of Midway in the path of the Japanese fleet. When Japanese carriers launched their strike against Midway on June 4, 1942, American dive bombers caught them with their aircraft on deck, bombs and torpedoes exposed, fuel lines open. 3 Japanese carriers were destroyed in 5 minutes of diving attacks. The 4th was destroyed later that day. Japan lost 4 fleet carriers and hundreds of experienced pilots they could never replace. The battle was decided by intelligence, by cryptanalysts working in a basement, giving admirals perfect knowledge of enemy intentions. German U-boats suffered similar intelligence defeats. British codebreakers at Bletchley Park broke German naval Enigma in 1941, providing the Admiralty with knowledge of U-boat positions, patrol areas, and refueling rendezvous. This intelligence allowed Allied convoys to route around wolf packs, avoiding entire patrol lines without the Germans understanding why their carefully positioned submarines weren't finding targets. When U-boats did find convoys, Allied escorts had advance warning, allowing them to deploy hunter-killer groups that turned the hunters into the hunted. Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the German U-boat force, suspected in 1943 that Enigma might be compromised. He ordered investigations that should have revealed the truth. German mathematicians tested whether Enigma could be broken and concluded it was mathematically impossible. German counterintelligence searched for spies who might have stolen codebooks or machine settings and found nothing. The possibility that the Allies had built an industrial-scale code-breaking operation using hundreds of mathematicians and early electronic computers never occurred to German investigators. The scale and sophistication of Bletchley Park exceeded their imagination. The final revelation of the intelligence war came after Germany's surrender. British intelligence slowly revealed to captured German officers that their communications had been comprehensively compromised. Admiral Dönitz's reaction, when told in 1974 that the Allies had been reading German naval communications throughout the war, was one of stunned disbelief. He had sent 30,000 submariners into the Atlantic, 75% of whom never returned. Many had died in operations compromised before they began, sailing into traps orchestrated by enemies reading German operational orders before his commanders received them. General Alfred Jodl, captured and awaiting trial at Nuremberg, learned that German communications had been compromised throughout the war. His response combined professional admiration with personal anguish. The Allies had fought a different war, he realized. While German commanders struggled with incomplete intelligence and unreliable assessments, Allied commanders had near-perfect knowledge of German plans, dispositions, and intentions. The Germans had been fighting blind against an enemy who could see everything. The intelligence war of World War II established principles that remain relevant today. Information dominance provides operational advantage that can overcome material deficiencies. Deception operations succeed when they align with enemy expectations and are supported by multiple independent sources. Codes and ciphers, no matter how mathematically sophisticated, can be broken with sufficient resources and expertise. And most importantly, institutional blindness, the unwillingness to accept uncomfortable truths, can be more dangerous than any enemy weapon. The people who won this secret war were not traditional heroes. They were mathematicians solving equations, linguists analyzing phonemes, clerks filing reports, technicians maintaining communications equipment, and artists constructing dummy tanks. Many worked in complete anonymity, unable to tell even their families what they did. Joan Clark, a mathematician at Bletchley Park who worked on naval enigma, couldn't discuss her wartime work until the 1970s, when the British government partially declassified the ultra-secret. For 30 years, she kept silent about work that had helped save thousands of lives. The controlled agents who played roles in the double-cross system lived under constant stress, knowing that one mistake could expose them and lead to their execution. Eddie Chapman, codenamed Agent Zigzag, was a British criminal recruited by German intelligence who became a double agent. He maintained his cover through years of dangerous work, convincing German handlers of his loyalty while feeding them British-manufactured intelligence. His psychological burden, pretending to be someone he wasn't, maintaining elaborate deceptions even in casual conversations, was enormous. The legacy of the secret war extends far beyond World War II. The techniques developed by British intelligence in the double-cross system became foundational to modern counterintelligence practice. The cryptanalytic methods pioneered at Bletchley Park led directly to modern computer science. The deception principles tested in Operation Fortitude inform military deception doctrine today. The integration of signals intelligence with operations pioneered in World War II became standard practice for modern militaries. But the most important legacy is the recognition that war is fought in multiple dimensions. The physical battles of tanks and aircraft and naval guns are only one dimension. The intelligence war, the battle for information dominance and perception management, can be equally decisive. Sometimes the greatest victories are won not by killing the enemy, but by convincing him to make the wrong decisions. Lieutenant David Strangeways, watching that German reconnaissance aircraft photograph dummy installations in May 1944, was fighting that other war. His weapon wasn't a rifle or a tank. It was carefully constructed lies, meticulously maintained through thousands of details. His battlefield was the German commander's mind. His victory came when those commanders deployed forces to defend against threats that existed only in intelligence reports from agents who were controlled, communications that were compromised, and photographs showing installations that were rubber and canvas. The secret war of World War II demonstrates a profound truth about modern conflict. Technology matters, industrial capacity matters, tactical skill matters, but information dominance can overcome deficiencies in all those areas. An enemy who is systematically deceived about your intentions, capabilities, and dispositions is already defeated before battle begins. He will make wrong decisions, deploy forces incorrectly, and waste resources countering threats that don't exist. While he fights the war he thinks he's fighting, you fight the war that actually exists. The German 15th Army sitting at Pas de Calais throughout June 1944, waiting for an invasion that would never come, embodied this principle perfectly. 19 divisions of trained soldiers with armour, artillery, and air support were rendered strategically irrelevant, not by combat, but by deception. They didn't lose battles. They never fought the battles that mattered because they were in the wrong place, defending against a threat that existed only in carefully crafted intelligence reports. In the final analysis, Operation Fortitude and the broader secret war represent human intelligence triumphing over technological advantage. The Germans had excellent equipment, experienced soldiers, and sophisticated fortifications. They lost because they were fighting based on false information, making decisions in an intelligence environment completely controlled by their enemies. They couldn't see the battlefield clearly. They couldn't understand their opponent's intentions accurately. They couldn't trust their own intelligence services because those services had been systematically compromised without their knowledge. The lesson for future conflicts is clear. Invest in intelligence. Protect your communications. Question your assumptions. Verify your sources. Recognize that the enemy may be feeding you exactly the information he wants you to believe. And understand that the greatest danger isn't the enemy you can see, but the enemy who has convinced you to look in the wrong direction while he strikes from where you least expect. The men and women who fought the secret war deserve recognition equal to those who fought the visible war. They saved lives through their work, shortened the conflict, and established principles that continue protecting free nations today. Their weapons were mathematics, linguistics, psychology, and art. Their battlefield was the information environment. Their victory was making the enemy believe lies so thoroughly that he never questioned them until after defeat was inevitable. The rubber tanks in Dover fields, the fictional army group under Patton's command, the controlled agents transmitting carefully scripted reports, the codebreakers reading German messages, the photo interpreters analyzing reconnaissance imagery, the deception planners coordinating operations across theaters. These were all instruments of victory as surely as any bomb or bullet. They represent war fought at its most sophisticated level, where the objective is not destroying the enemy's forces but controlling his perceptions, not winning battles, but ensuring he fights the wrong battles in the wrong places at the wrong times. On June 6, 1944, when Allied forces stormed Normandy beaches, they were fighting an enemy whose perceptions had been systematically distorted for years. The German defenders fought bravely, but they fought without clear understanding of what they faced. Their commanders made decisions based on intelligence that was comprehensive, consistent, and completely false. The secret war had already been won. The physical battle was merely the confirmation of an intelligence victory, achieved through years of patient, meticulous deception. That is the ultimate lesson of the secret war. Sometimes the greatest military victories are won not by superior violence, but by superior understanding. Not by destroying what the enemy has, but by convincing him to deploy what he has in ways that make it irrelevant. Not by direct confrontation, but by indirect manipulation. In war, as in chess, the most elegant victories come when the opponent realizes too late that every move he made was exactly what you wanted him to make, that his strategy was based on a position that didn't exist, and that he's been fighting the wrong war all along.